heavy as like finances or or an illness or things like that. There are little things that you can be, and it's like training a muscle, right? Maybe start small. You know, start with like a little failure. Like, man, I tried to mow the grass the other day. I forgot to put gas in the mower and it wouldn't start, or something like that. Something silly, right? That's not really that heavy. But what it does is it helps the kid realize, like, oh, dad makes mistakes too. Okay,
Yeah.
that's it happens.
It's
All right,
no
it's
longer
okay.
like this imposter, like I'm the only
Yeah.
one that doesn't make, or I'm the only one making mistakes, like
Well, because
especially as a
sometimes as a
parent.
parent too, you want to come across as like you got everything together. Like I'm the dad, I'm the
Right.
one in charge, I got it all figured out. You know what? And but then what happens is that your kids feel like, oh man, I can't make a mistake. Like my dad's perfect. Like nothing ever happens with him. Like he's because we as adults have it can really like cover things up pretty well most of the time, up to a certain point. Right? We all have our breaking point, but for the most part, everyday stuff you can gloss over. Like
All right, everybody, welcome on back to Mind Over Matter. This week we got Jason. Thanks for coming on. How you feeling, man?
man, feeling good. It's nice and sunny here this week here in the Midwest. The leaves are coming out, the flowers are blooming. It's colorful around here. So school's about ready to get out as well, right? Summertime, a lot of things to be excited for. So overall, things are great, man. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, how you feeling over there, Kevin?
I'm good. Here in Tennessee, we're in about our 1 week of spring where it's not ungodly hot in the afternoon. So I will probably be enjoying that a little bit later. But all things considered, I am phenomenal. How are you?
Good, good, man. It's been a good long week, but it's always nice to end on a nice, good recording. So, Jason, just found him on LinkedIn. Really starting to use LinkedIn now. It's really great for connecting, especially with business owners. I found out. So, really trying to get out there, Jason. I just saw you're into sports. I grew up in Chicago, so we're all kind of big sports people. And then my dad's been a teacher my whole life, so just kind of around the coaching, kind of the mindset you need to coach and everything. So definitely intrigued by what you got going on. If you want to just kind of start with, who you are, where you're from, and
Sure.
how you started doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I've loved sports since I was a kid, right? And I grew up in the Michael Jordan era, so I mean,
The goat.
love the Bulls, man. How could
Yeah.
you not, right? At the same time, though, I grew up a Cardinals fan, so I hated the Cubs.
Oh,
So I have like a love hate with Chicago, man. So but at the end of the day, it's always like a fun little rivalry with the Cardinals Cubs, right? I mean, it's just sports. Like life goes on after that. But what I've learned is with my love of sports, and what I've come to realize is the things that sports taught me as a kid, and even into high school, and then now as a coach as well. It's just so many great things that you can use sports for beyond just playing it and beyond the outcomes, but like who you become because you participate in it or because you are able to change lives because you coach kids or just the opportunities to really feel like you're on purpose and feel like and feel in the moment too, right? Like it's so that's a lot of my reason. Like number one, it's a great thing for everybody to get involved in, but also it's you know what can you do to make yourself better because you either participated or you had an influence on somebody else.
right. Yeah, I seen on your website you got like two different packages. Do you only? I think it. What are your two different packages? Because I saw you. Do you only do certain age groups then?
Yeah, so we do like right now we do primarily like 7 to 11 year olds. We have a course for them, and then we have like middle school kids like 11 like 12, 13, 14. And then we also like to focus on parents, like helping parents understand like what is sports going to actually do for your kid, because it's probably not going to be a full ride scholarship to college. They're they're highly unlikely to get paid to play. Just based, and these are just based on stats, right? Like you always encourage your kids to dream, right? Have a dream, believe in it, give your best effort, but know like at some point you're gonna have to pivot and then find a different route. It's part of your journey. It's not your entire journey, right? So, I think that um, that's a lot of our education piece of it is like what is sports going to do for you, from for your kid, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of those skill sets like courage, like having a power of a positive attitude, things like finding joy, finding, resiliency as well. What does it take to be relentless and unstoppable? All those things that you can learn by playing sports, and that's what we teach in those courses that we have. And those are skill sets that are going to help you the rest of your life, no matter what you're doing, whether it's your career, whether it's your relationships with the people around you, whether it's being a parent as well. I mean, those are all things that are going to, you can always continue to develop, right? My jump shot right now is not going to land me a contract, right? It's great for pickup, right?
Me
Hanging out with your
neither.
buddies, right? But it's not bringing home the check, right, to help support my family. So, but what I had learned was, what happens whenever things don't go your way? How do you respond? What happens when, you get cut from the team, or what happens when it's you realize like, hey, man, it's over, right, or whatever. Um, so, when we focus on the lessons that we can learn through the experiences and what can be taught from there, that's when sports really like gives us a platform of development that really not very many other things can.
Yeah, and it's definitely not even something that was really offered when I was growing up, something like that, because it seems almost because you watch film on the way you play. You watch film. There's even a day for it if you're on a good team, but you don't. That's to better yourself in the sport. You don't watch film like on you as a person. Almost, this is what it kind of seems like. You're almost kind of spectating yourself, and you're pointing out to the kids like, this is what it takes to be a leader. This is what it takes when you lose. Like, because for
Mm.
me, man, I used to strike out in baseball, and I used to cry like half the time because I'd be so pissed off because I didn't get to play. Like, I strike out, and then I realize I got to go sit down, not get to play, watch everyone else, and then maybe I'll get to play again. And my parents are dumping all this money into all these sports, especially hockey. I grew up playing hockey, and that's expensive,
Oh yeah,
man. Like,
yeah,
that's not cheap. But if I grew up playing hockey, yeah, sure, I had a bunch of fun my whole life. But if I didn't learn from all the lessons that was exposed to while playing hockey, then we may have just dumped a bunch of money down the drain just for me to have fun on the weekends. And I didn't get
yeah.
anything out of it.
And that's what we try to tell parents is like, what are you investing in? Like like why, like, because it is an investment, but if it's an investment to try to get your kid, you know, to the next level or whatever, you might be disappointed in that investment. But if it's an investment on, hey, my kid is, more respectful, he's happier, he's more emotionally intelligent, like mind over matter, right? So just to give you an example, I had coached eighth grade boys in basketball this year, and we ended up winning our city tournament. But what I did with them, we started off 1-4. What I did with them, I said like, hey, trust the process. We're going about it the right way. Things will turn around, and then I started helping them like, what are our values here? So we picked three values. I had them pick it. It was confidence, determination, and loyalty. And every practice, we talked about it, like, what does that mean? And what does that look like to you as a 14-year-old? How does that apply to your teammates? And then we went even further and we talked about using mental pictures. Like, imagine yourself being successful. Imagine what that would feel like getting emotionally intelligent. And then imagine your teammates also having similar successes. And then what happened was, like, we played our best game in the highest pressure moment, right? In the championship game. Like, they played amazing. It's because they did the mindset work. They did the emotional work. They were willing to, do something that has not really been ever taught to them before. Right? And it's not really taught to you at 14 years. Most of the time, it's like the pros they have these mental performance coaches, they have these psychologists, they have all these people to help them with that. But when it's really needed is at those adolescent ages to help you develop and form a mindset of like, yeah, I can do it. Yeah, I believe myself. Oh, and I also feel like I can do it as well. Because it's one thing to think it; it's another thing to actually like know it and like believe it in your body too.
Yeah, my dad said he started doing that too. He started coaching. I want to say it's sixth grade, and it's just a bunch of kids that don't know how to play basketball, just getting out there because they can. So they don't really know how to play. But he said this year he started. Everyone, close your eyes before the game. Picture yourself winning. Picture yourself with the trophy and how happy you'd be. and see like how, because even that is enough to get you to want to play harder and want to do better. If you could picture yourself just being happy, just like, yes, I
Hmm.
won. Like at least at least for me. And then all these lessons, like you said, they don't get taught at all. And for a kid, me and Kevin say it all the time in the entrepreneur space. You don't know what you just don't know.
Sure.
Like, and that's if you're going through all these emotions and you're going through all these experiences, this leadership experience or whatever it is, and you have no idea that you were a leader in that time. Like for me, I was a captain, but I didn't know that's what it meant. I needed to be a leader, and everybody's looking at me, and everybody's turning on me, and I should be lifting the whole team up. I didn't know. I was just there because that was my natural position. That's what the coach thought I should be at. Like I didn't know I should be learning all these lessons just because you get coaches. I mean, just like my dad, he didn't want to coach basketball. He just fell into the spot. If they're not getting paid, it's just another coach who's got the spare time.
And there's like so much that goes into sports, like mindset. I think about like running specifically. No sport really teaches you how to run. It's like if you took every sport and put it in water, first thing coaches would teach kids is how to swim. But every sport damn near involves running and mindset, but no one's really teaching it. And so it's like it seems so obvious now that you mention it. It's like
Yeah, it evolves, right? Everything evolves. Like we evolve as a species, right? And even coaching has evolved to where it's like, a lot of times you would have in the old school days, it was, hey, you need to, adjust to the coach. Well, now it's more of like, if you really want to get the most out of your kids and your players, learn about them, build relationships with them, build that trust with them. So whenever you do challenge them, they know that you're trying to get them to become the best version of themselves. You're not just doing it because I told you to, right? Kids are smarter than what they ever were before. They have more access to more information than they ever have. Like, I think I saw a stat that a teenager with a cell phone has access to more information than what the president did in the mid '90s, right?
Yeah.
So and kids can read on if you are being genuine, authentic, and if you're just being a phony, right? They pick up on that real quick, so it's a fact of like you got to let kids know that you really care about them more so than what they can do for you on a court or a field or anything like that. And when they feel that way, then when you have to hold them accountable, they may not like it, but they end up craving it because they see the progress of them improving, and they know like, man, I don't like this, but it's helping me get closer to my goal, my dream, and make that a reality.
I mean, it's the same thing in the army. Yeah, dude. Like I don't want people to fear me and feel compelled to listen to me because they're afraid I'm gonna yell at them or make them do push-ups or whatever. Like in my mind, I'd rather be able to say I'm disappointed in you, and that should be the worst thing I could say. Like,
Mm-hmm.
not you're afraid of me because you're afraid of me. You want me to think highly of you in a way like that, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like anytime that you lead from like fear based, meaning like you are there, the whoever you're leading is acting from a fear perspective. It's a short term game, but you're gonna win the battle, but you're gonna lose the war, right? Where on the flip side, you might lose a couple battles along the way, you know, but you're gonna end up winning the war because eventually you're gonna pull them in a direction of like, man, okay, now I see what it's talking about. Like whenever things start to click naturally with them, based on those little like seeds that you plant from like challenging them, encouraging them, you know, constructive criticism as opposed to like them worried about being yelled at, they're gonna go much farther in the long run, and they're going to reap the benefits way more so than trying to get them to do something based off of a fear based strategy or tactic.
Yeah, and I mean, for the parents now, I mean, me and my mom were just talking a couple days ago about how she didn't want us to hate her all growing up. She didn't want her like whatever decision she made for us. She didn't want us to hate. If my brother's out at a party and they're drinking and the parents aren't home and she just showed up and picked them up and took them home, of course he's gonna be pretty damn upset, you know. But
Yeah,
but my mom's got to do that in order to take care of him, and we don't understand that until we're older. What? Because you kind of what kind of what kind of advice would you give a parent to kind of get them to understand that more? Could your kid, you're gonna have to make decisions that your kid doesn't like because
yeah,
no one wants their kid to hate them.
sure.
you know.
I would say the simplest thing is be likable, but doesn't always mean you're going to be liked. So be likable, like smile at your kids, give them a hug, tell them you love them, right? Do fun things with them. And I even do this, like, so I have a 6 and a 4 year old, and sometimes we'll say, "Hey, man, it's your day today. What do you want to do? You get a pick," you know. And then because anytime that somebody takes interest in what you're interested in, that's going to make you feel valued, make you feel loved. So I learned this from a parenting coach. She told me that, connect before redirect. Connect with your kids, you know, and hang out with them. Spend time with them. Do the things that they want to do. So whenever you have those moments of like where like you like gotta pick up him because he's out there somewhere where he shouldn't be, then you're like, look, man, I love you, but we gotta go because this isn't what's best for you, and you may not like it, and that's okay. But because I'm your parent, I always have to look at what's best for you until you leave this house, and you just lay it out for them. And then you can let them be in their feelings of disappointment. You can let them feel upset about it. You all don't have to have the same feelings about a situation, right? He's not like your brother did not have to be happy about leaving, but as long as he understands that mom is coming because she's doing it for your best interest, and you'll thank her in the long run. I don't know if that does
Yeah.
that kind of help. I mean,
I mean, I remember thinking that as a kid, like my mom would make me come inside when the sun went down. I was like, bro, I want to play with my friends. Now I'm like, oh, cool, because I didn't get kidnapped or anything. And it's like sometimes, like you're a teacher. You ever meet those like parents or students where the parents just let the kid do whatever they want and
I
they
mean, it
never
does.
tell them.
It happens, and I think part of it is because you always have to wonder, and I always try to get curious, like what happened in that kid's childhood that is showing up now as a parent. Like, did they have a super strict parent growing up that didn't let them do anything, and now it's playing out as the exact opposite, right on the other end, right? Like where, it's or is it, maybe they had trauma in their background. Maybe it's maybe their kid is creating challenges that they don't know how to deal with. So sometimes it's you're naturally inclined to do what's easier, right? It's easier to let your kid do whatever they want as opposed to really like going after and parenting them in a way that's going to be loving, that's going to lead them to be great parents. And I always try to have an image of my sons as adults, being healthy, helpful, and happy, right? So those are the three H's I always say. Like when my kids grow up and become adults, are they healthy, helpful, and happy? And so I always try to like parent right now when they're young and see a vision of them as an adult. And if I've done the work right now, that's going to pay off when they become older, right? So that's kind of what I try to have, that vision of what I hope to see them, because whatever they're doing, it doesn't matter to me, honestly. I think you got to feel what your calling is, and that might be different than mine. But again, as long as they're those three things, you're happy, you're healthy, and you're helpful, then it doesn't really matter what you're doing because it's all going to fall into place.
It's such a wise way of looking at it too, like looking for the underlying cause behind those types of things.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you are training something, right? Whether it's, hey, like everything is okay, so that's what they're gonna think, or hey, oh man, there are boundaries, or hey, and I also learned this: ask your kid this one question: Are you can you live with the consequences of what you're about to do? And this is more so if you have teenagers, right? Get them thinking about the consequences. Like, you can definitely, you have the choice to leave this house and go hang out with your buddies and do whatever you want to do. But if something happens, are you going to be willing to live with the consequences of what took place? And you might just be in the wrong place, wrong time. You may have done nothing, but because you were in a certain situation, you get it's assimilation by association. You're gonna be around it, then you have to maybe clean up a mess that you maybe didn't want to be involved in.
Yeah, it's hard. Me and Kev talk about this quite a bit too. It's hard to almost teach something like that. That you almost have to let a kid go through it and be like, "Man, I got stuck in this
Sometimes.
situation." And you almost have to just live it yourself. And I had to live a bunch of stuff myself, but like you said, you have three core values, and if you focus on the values and the foundation of the child, you won't have to focus on the problems that they're going to run into. You could be scared of all the problems your child's going to run into, because your child is going to run into problems, and no mom wants to see their kid hurt, no dad wants to see their kid hurt. So they are going to run into problems. But if you built that foundation for the problems, like you're saying, I wasn't able to strike out and be happy about it. So when I ran into my first couple problems, I was hurt. I ended up being depressed and anxious and not knowing what to do because I didn't get my way or it didn't go how I thought it was supposed to go. But that was an experience I had to live through. My parents tried to tell me all growing up, but I didn't learn until until I lived that experience.
And I
You
think
had to learn the hard way. Yeah.
the coolest thing you can do is ask your kids questions, right? Is because it always, whenever you can reframe it to make it feel like it's their idea, then you're always going to be more like inclined to like your own idea, right? So for me, and this is something as I've learned as well, is like, yeah, when you struck out, like, hey man, how does it feel right now? Oh, I'd be pissed off too if I struck out. What did we learn from it? Oh, maybe I should keep my elbow up. Maybe I can take a few more practice swings. Maybe I can use my imagination to see myself hit the ball. Whatever it is, like. But if you are able to like guide a kid through their struggles and let them feel their feelings, like, hey, you know what? It is okay to feel disappointed. That shows me that you care. It's good to care. Because sometimes like if you came back smiling because you struck out, I would kind of be concerned about that as well. Like, oh, he's happy that he just got out. Like, that's not the goal. We want to get on base, right? So, but the reality of it is, in baseball, you're gonna, if you get on base 3 out of 10 times, that's success. You're gonna fail more than you're gonna succeed in baseball, right? So, I think the more that we can ask our kids questions, the more that we can let them kind of come up with their own solutions. And I tell my son this too. I was like, the best thing you can have are two things: be a great decision maker, and the best thing you can have in life is have great friends. I mean, that's the key to longevity: is great friends and making great decisions.
Yeah.
Are you can see a big difference in these kids, kind of like a before and after when they started playing sports with you?
Oh yeah, I'll even have teachers tell me. Like I had one kid this year. He was a tough kid. Like he was a good player, but his attitude was terrible. But I told him, I was like, hey man, I believe in you and I want you to be successful. So if you're gonna be on this team, these are the things you're gonna have to do, and you don't have to like it. You don't, because I did character checks in with them. Like they had to have their parents fill it out. They show up on school on time. They had to turn stuff in. They had to be respectful of their teachers. He was like, man, this feels like I'm a kindergartner. Like, that's fine, but you're gonna have a boss one day in a job that's going to have you report to them, especially if you're new, because they don't know anything about you, right? And you're gonna have it. And so I told you, you don't have to like it, but if you want to start and if you want to play, this is what I expect. And then I had some teachers tell me like, I don't know what happened to this kid, but ever since he started playing basketball, he's been kinder, he's been more helpful. He's nicer to his. He's like correcting other kids in class about stop. And this was the kid that was like the problem kid, right? So I mean, it's things like it's just simply like setting a foundation to help kids succeed, whether they are playing sports or whether they're in school or whether in life. And there's certain things that if you are consistent with them, they learn what that means. All kids need is a great example of what success and happiness look like. That's
Right.
all they need, right? People in general will do more of what other people do, way more than what people will tell them.
Yeah.
We're just copycat. Like we're a copycat society. Like
Yo,
you see it, you do it. You see it, you do it. You
That's,
know?
yeah. No, that's exactly what happened. That's
yeah, we
exactly what happens.
we had a report card type deal like that when I was in karate growing up, right? Because you might not be able to tell now, but I was a really rebellious kid for like no real reason. And my parents put me in karate because I was such a turd, right? And they had us like work with our parents and fill out this like weekly report sheet. And like you had a goal, and then it was like it had all this cool stuff like you're talking about, right? At the time, I was like, well, this is so dumb, dude.
Yeah.
But like but then it had like a goal for the week, right? And the Master Gonzalez, bro, shout out to him. He would read your goal out, and if you accomplished it, like he would say it in front of everyone. Like that was super cool with me. And then if it was like some kind of like, oh, stop talking bad to your parents, he would just kind of ask you if you completed it right. Like he wouldn't tell everyone, but it was really cool. I'm like looking back, there's so many of those things where I'm like, that was so like annoying that the adults made me do that. But now I'm like, I wish they had done
Yeah,
that
and
more
it
almost.
gives the kids something to focus on that's not school. Like when you're going to a sport and you have someone like Jason, Jason teaching you how to think and how to act and what to do. Like you have something else to focus on that's not video games, TikTok, or school. And that seems to be like with the top, like social media, school, and then you go home and do what? So when you go to
TikTok.
sports and you're going to sports to have fun, that's cool. But if you're not learning anything from it, you just go, you have fun. This is what I did. I went, had fun, then went home, and that was really it. Didn't think about it because what was next? Video games or work? Maybe I had to go to work. So, but that's you don't learn unless you have someone pointing it out to you, and that's like
Yeah.
the hardest part because not many coaches can point it out. You need that
Y-
coach, and everybody has that one coach they could think back on, and it's like that's the coach that I learned the most from.
Yeah, because like you're not teaching people or kids what to think; it's how to think almost.
Hmm.
Right.
That's what I always portrayed to them was like, hey, you know what? I asked them, I was like, do you guys want to have a successful year? Meaning, like, you all, because I think you all can do it. That's what I told them. But at the end of the day, it's up to you. I'm here. I'll tell you anything you want to tell me, but it has to be bought in from you guys. And I actually took them and we went and did a service project where we fed the homeless to get them an idea of like, hey, you know what? All the things you complain about on a daily basis, let's turn that into gratitude. Because there's a whole lot of other
Oh,
people that would trade you spots in a heartbeat. Whatever your situation is, I promise you, man. And we did that for it was on Super Bowl Sunday, which was kind of funny because it was like Soup Kitchen Super Bowl, right? That kind of. But they walked out of that. Parents were like, "My kid has never thanked me as much after doing that." But it also teaches them service, right? That everybody is equal, right? You're not better than anybody else, right? Everybody just has different situations. We don't know their situation, right? We don't know why they're in that situation, but it's a great chance for you to be thankful and realize, man, my life could be so much worse than what it actually is, and build that perspective and realizing that, hey, you know what, I'm doing okay. And then it also helps build mental health because the more that you get out of your own head and you help somebody else, you start to feel better about it. You start to
Yeah.
feel better about yourself because you're thinking about other people. You're not in your own story swirling about how woe is me. You're like, oh man, I just helped them. I just gave that person a meal for that. I don't know when their next meal is, but I helped them. And there's a relief and a feeling of gratitude and a feeling of joy and knowing that you help somebody make their day better.
Yeah, and that's a lot of people. I've tried to do this ever since I started just getting out of the house more. Just being happy to just be there, just be present right here, right now. I'm not upset because I'm not home working, or not upset because I'm going to the gym 15 minutes late. I'm here. I'm right now. This is what's happening to me. I'm walking to the gym. It's okay. And even that is enough for me to enjoy what's happening because I'm not thinking about everything else. Just one quick second to think to myself, just enjoy this right now, whatever's happening. And that's one of my tricks. But I've never even I can't think of something like that where someone brought me to something like that, like a soup kitchen or something as a kid, just to get out there and do something like that. Have you had?
fucking. My parents went to soup kitchens when I was in high school. Actually, I never went just because I was like kind of a coward, I guess, about the whole thing. I don't know. I was lazy. I don't
What's
know.
scary, man, as a teenager,
Yeah.
it's definitely like you're way out of your comfort zone, right? So I mean, and so I was like, I told him like, you guys all need to show up if you want. And I told him like, if you all want to start, you better show up. Or if you want to play, you better show up. 'Cause that's what sports can do. Like you have something they want, so then you can get them out of their comfort zone because you have what they want. They want to play. Okay, here's the requirements. Here's what's expected of you. You do this, you play. You don't play. Right? I mean, it's yeah, I feel like sometimes we make things like too complicated, right? But at the end of the day, it's like if you're coaching kids or really coaching anybody, who are they becoming because you had an influence on them?
Yeah, when you start, me and Kevin talk about it a little bit, vulnerability, and it's like that. It's like almost in every relationship, I can almost point to the point where it's like, all right, that's where the line was crossed, and we became vulnerable with each other, and that's when we start building trust and becoming a team. Do you do you start like that? How do you start with your kids? What's like one of the first things you go through? Like a
Yeah,
new group of kids.
um, what I do is and not everybody has this, but I wrote a book about losing my dad to suicide. So I'll give them like, hey, here's my story, guys. I'm just like, it's all right here. If you have any questions about anything you're going through, I'd be happy to let you know. Like, and I even tell them like, you know what? I'm gonna make mistakes. I'm gonna make the wrong decisions. I might put the wrong guy in. I might draw something up, and it might not go how it's supposed to. And I admit that I am not perfect, but I can promise you this: I'm gonna give you your best. What I'll do too is I'll ask them questions like, "Hey, what was the?" And I'll start with this like, "What was the funnest thing you've ever done in your life? What was?" It? And I have them share like, "What was the funnest thing they did?" I don't go into like where'd you travel to or restaurants you eat at because some people's socioeconomic situations are different, right? So I always stick to things like, hey, what was the funnest thing you did? What was the toughest thing you ever had to overcome? Or what was the most challenging moment that you ever? And a lot of them will say, going through COVID as a 12-year-old, as an 11-year-old. I was like, yeah, man, that was, and I acknowledge that was probably really tough. How do you feel now that you made it through that? Like, I feel like I can do anything. Yeah, that was resilient, man. That was not easy for anybody. So the fact that you're on the other side of it says a lot about you. And so whenever you give kids a chance to give people enough, like, and some will share more so than others, right? And that's okay, but it could be very surfacey. But the goal is like to get kids to like, share something that they can feel proud of. Like, yeah, man, you made it through that. That's great. It's impressive. So, and some people will open up about, what my dad's got cancer right now,
Yeah.
and I'm just really struggling with, and sometimes basketball is the things that helps me take my mind off it. Hey, man, we'll pray for you. Thank you for telling me. I hope your dad has a full recovery and he gets back on his feet again. So um, I think you have to set the example of what vulnerability looks like as the adult. And then
Yeah.
when somebody else is willing to be vulnerable with you, you have to hold space for them and know that this is a safe space and that whatever's said here stays here.
Yeah, and that's kind of why we started the show too, is to hopefully make the world more vulnerable and willing to open up. Because, like you just said, if I believe it as well, it's on the parents to create the vulnerable space so a kid can come up to you and they feel comfortable enough to come up to you, say, "Look, this is what I'm going through right now,
Mm-hmm.
and this is how like the parent should be be able to give some pointers and be able to talk them through it." But the parents now, and they are our age, they're not vulnerable themselves. So they're not telling their kid, "Look, we're going through like there, there's a barrier there in most. There's a
Yeah,
barrier. Look, I'm not going to tell my kids about our finances, about our health, like all this extra stuff instead of just being open and honest with everything. There's
yeah,
this like weird barrier."
Well, that's like how you gonna tell a 10-year-old though that y'all ain't making ends meet. Like they, I, I'm thinking if I were to get told that, I would think like I have to spend less money as a 10-year-old.
yeah. Well, I think what we do
It's tough.
is at the dinner table. It's like and we don't do this every night, but sometimes we're like, hey, you know what? Let's go around the table. Let's share what we failed today, and I'll say like, man, my lesson today, it was not good. Like the kids were crazy. Like I didn't feel like maybe I didn't prepare enough for it, or you know something went whatever. I'll just share like how I failed today, right? But then I was like, what I learned from it though was I probably should be more prepared. The next class I did this, I tweaked and changed and did this a little bit differently, and it went better. So I think even if it's not as heavy as like finances or an illness or things like that, there are little things that you can be. And it's like training a muscle, right? Maybe start small. You know, start with like a little failure. Like, man, I tried to mow the grass the other day. I forgot to put gas in the mower and it wouldn't start, or something like that. Something silly, right? That's not really that heavy. But what it does is it helps the kid realize, like, oh, dad makes mistakes too. Okay,
Yeah.
that's it happens.
It's
All right,
no
it's
longer
okay.
like this imposter, like I'm the only
Yeah,
one that doesn't make, or I'm the only one making mistakes. like
Because
especially as a
sometimes as a
parent.
parent too, you want to come across as like you got everything together. Like I'm the dad, I'm the
Right.
one in charge, I got it all figured out. You know what? And but then what happens is that your kids feel like, oh man, I can't make a mistake. Like my dad's perfect. Like nothing ever happens with him. Like he's because we as adults have it can really like cover things up pretty well most of the time, up to a certain point. Right? We all have our breaking point, but for the most part, everyday stuff you can gloss over like it's no big deal, right? So I think being intentional about the little mistakes that you have during the day, and just sharing them, and it's like, yeah, man, but I learned from it. And I tried my best. It just didn't work out how I hoped it did, and but I got better. And I think that's the goal. Is like the goal is in life is to grow and get better, and that's really the main thing we're all here trying to do. So I think if you can relay that message of like you're gonna mess up, but how did you grow and learn from it?
Yeah. Yeah, I got better. I messed up. I got better and I'm still here. That's
Yeah,
I'm
you know,
still
like
here,
still
bro.
kicking, still here, still living. Like we're fine. There was a little mistake, whatever it was. It's not the biggest deal. That's what started getting into my head, especially with the military, is they pound in your head if you make a mistake. You're doing push-ups or something
Oh,
outlandish.
like the
yeah,
dumbest thing. They'll act like, oh, I don't have a pen. Like
Yeah.
the sun's gonna fall out the sky, bro.
Like they put like this huge pressure on you. So when you do make a mistake, you're like, oh my god, I can't believe. Oh, what's gonna happen? Like this is gonna be the worst. So then when I got out, that's kind of where my mindset was. It's
it's
like,
that conditioning, right? Like it's
right,
like your mind goes to the worst case scenario. When if you take some, if you breathe and like it's gonna be okay. Like yes, you should be more organized, be more prepared. You name it. But again, just turn it into a learning opportunity. Don't make it feel like it's the end of the world or like it's the apocalypse, right? Because you didn't have a pin, right? It's gonna be okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Trevor's only 9 minutes early instead of 10. Like, God forbid, dude.
yeah. And that's where though, like something that is a like is a quality, right? Being organized, being prepared. Any quality can also be a vice if it's taken to the extreme.
Explain that a little
So
more.
Yeah.
what I mean by that is that so for example, like you over prepare, right? Or you like you're supposed to have a pin, right? But you don't have a pin, and then you set those fear tactics in your mind because you just didn't have a pin, right? As opposed to teaching you like, hey, you know what? Next time, what was your routine in the morning? Did you did you set yourself up for success in the day? Let's walk through this as opposed to like, you need to have a pin, go do 50 push-ups, and that'll teach you to never do it again.
Yeah,
You do your 50
that
push-ups, and you forget your pin the next day in the morning because you didn't really learn the lesson. You just learned that, oh man, I gotta do push-ups because I did something wrong.
Yep.
Right. So what I mean by that, any like you could be super organized, but if you're so organized that it takes all the time away from your kids, you're not spending any quality time with your kids because you had to be so organized on things, right? Or
Oh.
so I mean it's good to be organized. It's good to be prepared, but there's always a fine line of like, make yourself better and improving yourself, but don't take it to the extreme where it ends up, causing you to miss out on things, where it ends up causing you to damage your relationships. Because to me, at the end of the day, the things that really matter are the titles that are going to last forever. Dad, maybe husband, maybe son or a spouse or whatever it is. Those are the titles that you have for the longest periods of time that are going to leave a legacy more so than any other like professional title or anything else like that. Because I promise you, once you left, there's somebody that's going to replace you right after that.
Tell me about it,
Quickest
bro.
lesson I learned in the army, man.
Oh, dude, they'll within like a week, people fucking forget about you, dude. It's
Yeah, you're
remarkable.
replaced, right?
Yep, get
Your kids don't
replaced.
forget about you. Your parents, your
I've
siblings.
never seen a tombstone that said CFO on it, but I've seen plenty
Yeah,
that said husband and father and all that.
yeah. So, we get so wrapped up in like what does success look like, and to me, it's are my kids gonna want to come and visit me whenever they're adults? You know, am I still married whenever I'm 90? Right? Those kind of things. Like, man, that's when you look back at your life. What are the things you're gonna truly remember? And what are you gonna and the memories that you're gonna be like, man, I'm sure glad that I chose this over, you know, working 80 hours a week to fulfill what, to fulfill my bank account. Okay, I mean that all gets redistributed anyways whenever you die, so it doesn't you can't take it with you, right? So, um, I just think like let's have a more conscious thought on like what really matters at the end of the day.
I mean, yeah, look at our dads, Trev. Neither of them are stinking rich, but they were always there for us growing up.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's a
Always,
pretty
always by the
successful
side.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Like some things are important and some things are just poor metrics of success, I think. Like they're superficial.
Yeah, I mean it's great to have you obviously it's money is something that you need to have in life, right? It's a societal necessity, but it's something that is a tool that can be used to make a bigger difference, right? To help support yourself. It's not like to me a great measure of success. I mean, it helps, right? It can be reflective on some things, right? Obviously, it can be a good thing, but it's definitely not the like you know the only measure of what we should define success as.
The
Yeah.
end all be all, so to speak.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're running out of time a little bit here, so I'll ask what I've got on my mind. Um,
Uh oh.
for for kids that almost like they don't see any hope, like there's no hope in their mind, and I was at that point where you just don't really see where your future is or what you're gonna look like or anything. You're just kind of stuck in a place, whether it's because your family has no money, whatever it is, you're just stuck. Your parents died, whatever it is. Like you said, the post traumatic. Like, what's the first step they should take? Is it? Do you suggest like first step get into sports right away? Hey mom, I want to I want to get into karate. What's the first thing they can do to get out of the house and get their mind right?
I think number one, you have to acknowledge and be aware of where you're at, and then you also have to acknowledge. I also have to understand this that what season follows winter. Let's just look at nature for example. What season follows? Winter is like cold. There's no leaves on the ground. It's dark all the time, right? It can be kind of a gloomy time of year, if for some people. But what follows that is spring, right? So everything in life is a season. Maybe it's a season of challenge. Maybe it's a season of hardship. Maybe it's a season of poverty. But getting your mindset right and believing that life will eventually get better, that there's another season following this, that this is not like a permanent situation, it's only temporary, and that by going through this, you are it's going to teach you a lesson that's going to help you with whatever comes next. Like what's the teachable moment in this time of challenge, in this time of hardship, to help somebody else along the way can help people through those. Whenever you are realizing that this is only a training that's going to help me with what's next. And sometimes thriving is just surviving, like just making it through the day is a win. And that's
Yep.
okay. You don't have to be like not everybody's at the top of their game nailing it every single day. Sometimes it's literally just getting through the day and waking up the next day knowing like today has a great chance of being better than yesterday.
Yep.
That's good. That's cool though. I like that. It's like there are a lot of struggles in life, but it's what you can achieve from those struggles. I think that really matters.
Yeah, and if you don't want to even use the season aspect of it, if you want to go day to day, like it gets darkest before the sun comes up, right? So the darkest moment is followed by the some of the brightest moments when the sun comes up and like blasts light through, right? So, and I would also say this: in the darkest moments, the lights shine the brightest. So you can be an optimist of like see the light at the end of the tunnel, or you can be an elite optimist and be the light through the tunnel.
Mm.
Like
We
that.
we're a rational optimists here, and
We try
we
our best.
haven't had a day yet where the sun don't come up eventually though. So
Yeah.
got to be
Even if it's
something in
cloudy
there.
outside, the sun still comes up.
Absolutely,
And you're
absolutely.
still breathing.
Cannot always be dark. That's what we say.
But Yeah, man, we're trying 45-minute episodes. I don't know how we feel about it yet, but you're our
Yeah.
first go around. How'd you feel about it? Was it long enough?
Yeah, I thought it was a great conversation, guys. Kudos to you. It's always a chance to learn, right, and figure out what works. So I mean, you got to start somewhere.
Actually, one more question, because this what I think about a lot is homeschooling and sports. Is that because a lot of the biggest thing against homeschooling, and you may not know because you're the teacher, so I might be asking the wrong guy, but but the homeschooling aspect, a lot of people think it's scary because of the socialization. Is you
Mm,
don't your kid doesn't go anywhere to go socialize, but there's plenty of
hmm
sports outside of school that you could join, and that's what I think would be the best outlet. Is that
Sure.
what do you think is the benefit to homeschooling if it is sports, and if I don't know if I asked
I
that
think
kind of right.
benefits of homeschooling. You know, I think if you as a parent have the patience and the willingness to and the credentials as well to teach your children, that what a gift for your kids, right? And there's so many homeschooling groups that they go and they can meet up as well. It doesn't have to be sports. Like you can find homeschooling groups where they go and they'll meet up at a park or they'll meet up somewhere else, right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, you have to you know do what's best for what you think is best. Because everybody's gonna have an opinion on what they think you should do, but I think it's whatever you feel like is best for you and your kids, and have the satisfaction of knowing that I'm doing the best with what I knew. I felt like this was best, and
Yeah.
and, and go from there.
Do you notice a big difference between the kids that are homeschooled, or do you teach a lot of homeschooled kids at all? Do you?
No, I don't. I mean, um, sometimes I guess I think it's really situational to be honest. Like some kids you would never have known that they were homeschooled, and then other kids that were like, if your philosophy around homeschooling is to shelter and keep your kids away from society, then yes, there are some significant social situations. But if your philosophy on homeschooling is I want to teach my kids, I want to have my kids being around other kids that are and still prioritize the socialization piece and still have that a part of it, then I don't feel like you notice it as much. So it's really is like what is the intent behind homeschooling more so
Okay.
than being homeschooled.
Oh, that's it. That's interesting. I've never thought about it like that.
Yeah, me me neither.
So it always goes back to intention.
Yeah.
So I think that's really how you can tell the difference between certain kids that are homeschooled is like if their parents were intent about like not like keeping them away from society, then yeah, there's some significant social issues that are good because they don't know how to interact with people, right?
Yeah.
But if it's I feel like I can do it, I feel like I'm excited about it, and I have other means of getting my kids socialized or around or to handle social situations, right? Then like by putting them in sports, by putting them in activities, by meeting up with other homeschool groups, or you name it, then I don't think you won't notice it as much.
Okay.
Well, all right. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Jason. We'll send you the link when it's ready. Um, but yeah, man, yeah, you reached out right away too. Like I reached out to you, and then you got back right away. So I appreciate it a lot. And
Well, I'm humbled that you reached out, man. Thank you so much. It means it means a lot that you even reached out in the first place. So I appreciate that, Trevor. Yeah, it's been great. It's been a fun conversation, fellas.
yeah,
Excellent.
yeah, man. And we'll see how we like the 45 minutes. If we don't like it enough, we'll get you back on for another 45.
Let's go. Sounds good.
But all right, man. I appreciate it. And everybody, you got his links in the description below to check out all he's got going on.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
But yep.
Sure.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next time.